Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Capricorn, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for Aries season 2026. I hope you're well. I'm using the Arcane Limbus Tarot for you today. This is a deck I've had for quite a long time, but I've never had it out of the box. And of all of the decks that I have available, this is the one that wanted to speak to you today. So there's something kind of on point about that, given the time that we're in. So anyway, other things to tell you. There will be an extended at the end of this reading. If you would like to see it, you can access it via the links in the description box below. One of the links will take you to Selfie. If you just want one off, look at this one. If you want access to all of the extended content, so that's not just all of the videos for each of the signs, the extended content for that, but is also energies of the week, also access to classes and recordings of past classes, and the ability to come and participate in the Deccan Walk that we're doing here, which is a year-long tarot and astrology meld, right? Deepening our relationship with the tarot. If you want to come and participate in that, running from Aries season through to Pisces, you're very welcome to do that over at Circle as well. So let's flip the camera around here. I've called these readings Crossing the Rubicon, and I think for good reason. Like, the world is not going to be the same place by the time we go into Taurus season as we are, as what we perceive we are in right now. So to that end, what we're going to do is look at where you are right now. I think of all of the questions that we could ask ourselves, that one is the most important. The second, kind of leaning into somewhat to the Deccan of Aries that we're in at the moment, is where is your energy and attention best placed for sovereignty and embodiment during this season? And then finally, what is the next step, right? Taking into account those two questions that we've already asked, what is the next step from here? And in the extended, we'll dig deeper into anything that you need to know about the rest of this season. So I hope that's okay for you. Let's ask where Capricorn is right now. We have the Hierophant. Ooh, we have two come out together. They are the King of Wands and the Nine of Cups. And one more card, please. Whoa, we have a reversal. We have the Seven of Swords. Let me just shut that window because it's a bit noisy out there. What about this? Attention and energy, sovereign and embodiment. Where does that go for Capricorn, please? Oh. Okay, so we have the Lovers and the Ten of Pentacles together. There's one more for that. We have the Five of Swords. And we have the Knight of Swords in reverse. Okay. And finally, what is the next step for Capricorn, please? Whoa. Okay. Super. Ace of Pentacles. Love it. We also have the Six of Swords. Huge. And we have two cards coming out together here. We've got the Nine of Wands. No, Nine of Swords in reverse and the Three of Wands in reverse. Okay. So let me put these where you can see them all. It's kind of a dark deck, this one. I feel like the themes of decay and breakdown are very strong here. But in that curious way that the tarot seems to do sometimes, it's like the further it leaps into the breakdown, the decay and all these kind of things, that on the other side there is almost like a stronger indication of the new, of the creation, of the beginning, right? Let's put this Three of Pentacles over here where you can see it. That's a Capricorn card right there. And if we start with that shadow card, which is the theme, the underlying theme of the reading, what this card is talking about is cooperation and collaboration. Although, with the caveat that the cooperation and collaboration comes later. It's like everything that is instituted during this time is with, with that kind of Capricorn far-reaching eye, being like, this is something that people will come on board with later, but it's not what the emphasis of the it's not what the emphasis of the moment should be. It's almost like building in the redundancy for other people to come along, which is quite an interesting turn of phrase, because it could speak to, practical resource-based ideas in that sort of way, but it could also talk, and I think that this is very strong for you, Capricorn, it could also talk to the idea that, as I said, maybe last year or the year before, like everything begins in the dark, right? Everything begins with an initial thought, an initial action, a personal one. But as it starts to grow and develop, then other factors start to come in. What I'm trying to say, Capricorn, is it feels like opening your heart to the possibility of other people coming in. But first, you must do the work, right? And have that redundancy in your sense of self, sense of awareness, that other people will be coming along at some point. It's really interesting. One of the things that's been coming up quite a lot in the weekly energy readings is just how much more ease there is in recognizing who is aligned with you and who is not. And I'm not talking about from a political standpoint or an ideological standpoint, but say just in a level of development kind of standpoint. There are a lot of people who are kind of running around and saying that the sky is falling, and to some extent that's correct, right? But at the same time, there's always an after. I will refer you to the video that I made about how to thrive in 2026. It's just like realize that there will be an after. Now, I think a sign that is, as you are, Capricorn, so deeply connected to the idea of consequence, doesn't need to be told that there will be an after, right? It's just factored in there somewhere. But before we get to the after, we have to deal with the now, right? So understand that whatever starts here initially with you will gain momentum, I think, over time. It's quite literally the card that is underneath there. That's actually the Temperance card, but they've called it time in this deck. But it starts here first with you, whether that's practically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. It starts here with you. So when we ask the question of where you are right now, we have the Hierophant, the King of Wands, the Nine of Cups, and then this Seven of Swords in reverse. And there's something strikingly solid in a world that is deeply unsolid at the moment about the way that you're showing up here. The Hierophant is about structure. It is about, sometimes it's about hierarchy, right? But when we're talking about structure and hierarchy, we're not necessarily talking about, the government, as an overarching kind of authority structure telling everybody else what to do. We can be talking about social institutions, right? We can be talking about marriage. We can be talking about all these sorts of things. We can be talking about just the idea of something that is so structured and so stable. It has lasted for a long time, and it will continue to do so. Now, I think there's something really impressive here, Capricorn, about the level of dissolution that you have experienced over the last, shall we say, 16 months? But maybe it's been going longer than that. But I think the awareness of it, the amount of dissolution that has happened with your life, with your interests, with your drive, your motivation, all these kinds of things. And there is something still that remains that is highly structured, highly solid. I think it's only recently that you've started to perceive this in yourself. And as you seem to be standing here in front of me, there's much more of an emphasis around paying attention to those things that feel emotionally fulfilling than those things that might have fulfilled other needs that you've had in the past. The the recognition for work that one has done, the recognition of achievement, all that kind of thing. It's almost like there was a different version of a hierarchy or a different version of structure that you were working to before this 16-month period started to dissolve a lot of things away. And now you feel highly motivated to do those things that give you a level of emotional fulfillment, even if alongside it there is a loss of the things that you used to prioritize as important. So status, or a certain amount of financial security, or a job position, a role that had a corresponding level of whatever with it. It's like there's been a huge reorientation of you, and now you are deeply motivated in that direction. Now, do you have a plan to move forward? I don't think so. Not really. I mean, even that in and of itself could be, well, it would have been deeply disorienting to a version of you that existed a year, 2 years ago, right? But the internal stability in the face of external instability, I feel surprised by it. As you reading this, I feel surprised by that, but at the same time, there's a realness about this that feels novel to you. It feels like it's something that you haven't really experienced before. And so to some extent, what's going on outside of you is just sort of background noise at this point. We are crossing the Rubicon, we are going into difficult times and all that sort of thing. And we have to remember that everything that is piling up in Aries, literally as we speak, is going to be at some point in this, coming season, it is going to be directly squaring anything that you have in Capricorn. Now, a square in astrology is a point of friction. It is a point of discomfort. It's an astrological aspect that demands movement, and you can guarantee that what's moving, or what's been told should be moving right now, is not the stuff that's in Aries, although there's going to be all sorts of new things that come from that. And obviously you have a house that is ruled by Aries too. If you're a Capricorn ascendant, it'll be your 4th house, right, in whole sign at least. But there's something that's changing your whole world view here. As all of these planets move through Aries and they make that direct connection to whatever you've got in Capricorn, there's a state of inflammation that is caused, and there is an adjustment that needs to happen. Now, the Hierophant here tells me that what is internally structured within you is strong enough to weather that. It's like having the spine intact. Actually, Capricorn rules the bones, if I remember correctly. The spine is intact, but what we choose to scaffold onto that depends very much on what we consider to be important at this time. And for you, you are deeply motivated by the emotional fulfillment. It's like the things that passed for emotional fulfillment in the last few years, or maybe in the past few decades, actually, for some of you, revealed to be empty, revealed to be devoid of the thing that you were promised. If it feels like this emotional fulfillment was promised to me 4,000 years ago, like, where the fuck is it? I did everything I was supposed to do. Like, what I'm trying to say, Capricorn, is that you have been through the most monumental death and rebirth, and it may feel very different to how you thought it would feel. Well, we use these words quite a lot in tarot, in astrology, in all forms of divination, any kind of spiritual way, where we talk about the death and rebirth. And one must expect that this takes a while, but there's an emergent quality here to what I'm seeing in terms of where you are right now. And if you have been feeling kind of a little lost in the weeds somewhat, and as a Capricorn ascendant myself, I can certainly attest to that, it's like the spark that you need to start moving off in a direction is being provided to you by the discomfort of whatever is coming into that point of friction as it travels through Aries. Now, we will have at a point during the season, the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, Neptune and Chiron, all in Aries. Every single one of those bringing that point of friction to your Capricorn placements, forcing evolution, or maybe, you know, lighting the pilot light on the boiler that's about to fire up really quite dramatically, right? Because this final card we've got in terms of where you are right now, is actually fucking delightful, Capricorn. It's the Seven of Swords in reverse. Now, just to explain to you, this Seven of Swords here in the upright is given to be a card of deception. We talk about it representing deceit quite often. It's called the Thief card, right? Sometimes when this comes up in a reading, we can see that, you know, we are being deceived by somebody else, but more often than not, it's representing a way in which we're deceiving ourselves. Like, we're not working with an accurate view of reality. The ego's got involved somewhere, or our way of seeing the world. The limitations, self-imposed limitations, are actually stopping us from being able to see a wider breadth of things that can be experienced than we would like. So when this card reverses, what we have is a kind of clarity. What we have is a things laid bare. Everything's stripped down, and maybe it's stripped down to the bones here, Capricorn. Now, there's something exposing about that, for sure. But I think the exposure aspect of it is something that you've already experienced. We're already in a state of adjustment where you're actually feeling kind of strong now. You may not have very much. You may not have very much to work with around you, but there is a sense of increasing strength, and it is fueled by the amount of truth that you are tolerating, not just about yourself, but about the world at large, right? And part of the truth that you're tolerating about yourself is that you thought you were doing everything right, and now it feels like maybe you've been through this period already. It's kind of like, I was lied to, and I went along with it, and I threw my whole fucking self into it, and now everything looks different. Now, the interesting corollary of that, which can feel like a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it, is that awareness of how much other people's opinions, expectations, even entitlements, the unspoken social structure of everything, just how deluded a lot of that was, right? And now you're in this state of being stripped down and kind of seeing things for what they are, realizing how much of that you internalized and how much of that you made your drive, your passion, your, you know, how much you hung on to it as the way in which your reality was defined. Like, some people can go through a period of grief when they recognize that. Other people, though, and I think it's probably more this than the other, are starting to see that there's a level of freedom for them that was potentially always available if they chose to say no thank you very much, to do things differently. Because everything that you're dealing with here, Capricorn, feels much more real than it has done before. And if you've got the freedom to choose what you are going to do, absent all of these influencing factors that have been the ones that you've worked to for the longest time, then what seems like this, you know, gulf of nothingness, which is what a lot of people are afraid of at the moment, becomes a blank canvas for you to do actually almost anything that you want. And I can see how that would capture the Capricorn imagination very, very strongly. Because it's like all other methods of control, particularly when it comes to controlling one's environment, right? Or maybe people who are in one's environment, is almost like a facsimile of the level of control that you can actually have when you're focusing on those things that are yours to control. Do you see what I mean, Capricorn? So in terms of how we look to embody that, in terms of how we deal with our own sovereignty question. We've got the Lovers, the Ten of Pentacles, the Five of Swords, and the Knight of Swords. And I think there's an interesting message that is emerging from here. And the first thing that I want to say is that, it sounds a little trite, right? But with great power comes great responsibility, right? The power that you have is that you're seeing things a lot more clearly than you ever have done before. But we have to be careful not to abuse that power, right? Always. It's got to be kept in check. That's fine. We can almost, say that without having to linger on it too long. But I think there's something quite important here about not trying to bludgeon other people with your insights. If you are familiar with the allegory of the cave by Plato, you will recall that there is I won't go into the ins and outs of it, right? But the kind of TLDR skip to the end of Plato's cave is that, somebody realizes the truth. They experience the truth. They witness the sunshine outside of the cave. They realize that reality is not what they thought it was. And in a moment of wanting to share that, it's almost like a human impetus to share that with other people when we've had these big realizations. He goes back into the cave to try and convince his former cave prisoners that actually they don't need to stay there. They don't need to be here. They don't need to sit in the dark. They don't need to be, feeding on scraps and looking at the shadows across the wall. They can come outside and see the sun. And as Plato describes it, they kill him because nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants the comfort of what they know to be ripped away from them. Now, to some extent, Capricorn, I think perhaps we have been guilty of that as well. I don't want to look at anything that sits outside of the structure that is working very well for me, which could well have been, everything up until, 2024 for you, right? No. I know the rules of the game. I know how to win. I know where I can bend the rules and break the rules because I am so acutely aware of the rules of all engagements, right? But you've been through something in the last 16 months. And the embodiment aspect of this is not in expression. Interestingly, Capricorn, it's not about sharing what you know. It's not about trying to release other people from the limitations that they perceive on their own life, right? You can't, at this point, almost via osmosis, pass this knowledge and this wisdom on to other people. They have to discover it for themselves. And if they don't discover it for themselves, they're likely to shoot you down for it, right? So this Five of Swords here, sometimes, a Pyrrhic victory and all that kind of thing. We say sometimes, right, yeah, you've won, but at what cost? So you did what you set out to do, but at what cost? If the prisoners in the cave are going to beat you with chains and smash you up right here, was it really the right route forward? Now, the combination of this card here with the Knight of Swords in reverse is telling me to tell you to keep this information to yourself for now. And there is an interesting offshoot from that, which is the idea that talking about something is a replacement for action. So what I'm starting to see here is that there is a possibility that you may be newly awakened and you may have access to a new version of truth and whatnot. But if you simply try and talk about it, if you simply try and rally troops to see things in your way, you might actually be spiritually bypassing what the energies of the moment are trying to get you to do. Remember, between Aries and Capricorn, that tension, movement, right? And Aries is always going to be action oriented. It's not going to be verbal. It's not going to be communicative, right? So there's a warning here, right? Put your money where your mouth is. Don't rely on trying to share this information with people. Like for now, it is for you to begin the process, and we see, you know, some aspect of that down here. But this Lovers and the Ten of Swords, Ten of Pentacles, beg your pardon, is an interesting combination, particularly in terms of what we've already seen on the table, because the Ten of Pentacles is ultimately what Capricorn is always trying to move towards, right? You know, the Capricorn cards in the minor arcana of the tarot are the 2, 3, 4. They are the initiation. It's very much in alignment with Capricorn being a cardinal sign, right? It's about initiation, it's about pointing the way, it's about starting to move in a direction. And the idea is that the reason why Capricorn is you know, summoning all that monumental energy and focus and discipline and all that kind of thing to go off is because eventually he wants that energy to end up in a tangible result. 10 of Pentacles. Now the 10 of Pentacles can be inheritance, it can be your genetic inheritance, it can be your karmic inheritance actually. But it can also be things like homes and houses and business and structure, right? There's an idea of heritage and legacy here. But the Ten of Pentacles has within it the capacity to cause great suffering, and it's not immediately apparent in the card. It is in the trying to hold still what is a cyclical process. Something has to end for something new to begin. That is simply just the law of the universe, right? Maybe it comes down to, you know, laws of thermodynamics, right? Like nothing is created, nothing is destroyed, it simply changes form. Now, in order for the universe to be running properly, then what's changing form is that a Ten of Pentacles is always going to hold within it the capacity to turn into an Ace of Pentacles. And the suffering is caused where we try and interfere with that process. We try and keep everything still because structure, stability, all that kind of thing, right? And the Lovers card it's fascinating because we're talking about conscious co-creation here whenever the Lovers card shows up, but we are also talking about what's the word I'm looking for? Consent, right? We're talking about the exercise of free will here when this card comes along. So the universe is like, okay, Capricorn, this is not a test, but this is like the next hurdle that you have to cross in order to get to that Ace of Pentacles, which is an energy that you can vibe with so fucking well, because what is needed to take an Ace of Pentacles from its potentialized state into something is Capricorn energy. 2, 3, 4 of Pentacles. Getting in amongst it and on top of that and doing what only Capricorn can to bring it to life. Because at some point in the future it will look like this. But if we're going to get our hands on this kind of energy here, we have to wrestle with what this kind of energy means here. Now I'm hoping that you are all feeling solid enough in yourself, like the spine, the bones are all feeling dense enough now that we can allow things to shift. We can slough off what is not required moving forwards, right? What is part of the old cycle. But we kind of have to show up for that, right? This is not about passive observation, Capricorn. And it's certainly not about resisting what is trying to fall down in your life. So matters of business, matters of family, matters of external security, and the way that you have taken care of your own needs and taken care of your resources for you and other people up until this point. It feels like it's hitting a tipping point, but it's asking you to fully embrace it. Not just be oblivious to it, not being... fuck. I'm having real trouble with my words today. Not resisting it anyway. Right, but actively embracing it. Because there's an idea here that you could take something down brick by brick, and there's useful things in here for you if you engaged with it versus watching it just fall down. You know, we see these cards here, and this is where the universe is asking you to show up, and it's asking you not to broadcast it, not to, replace words for action and all that kind of thing. Because the next step is the Ace of Pentacles here. Now, it could be that the Ace of Pentacles is actually the request for you to pay attention to invest your energy in the structural takedown of whatever the Ten of Pentacles is in this case here for you. What has been your place of safety, right? But what also represents the culmination of a lot of work for you. But it could be something else. I mean, like I said, the extent to which the chaotic craziness of the outside world is going to, keep continuing it's unprecedented. Now, you can either lock into that and get fearful about it, or you can choose where you put your attention and your energy. And if you know where all of this is going, and you do, because there is not a single person who is even remotely astrologically informed who is surprised about the state of the world right now, it's going to do what it's going to do. Are you going to cry about it? Are you going to hide? Or are you just going to go, okay, well, I know that that's doing what it's going to do, so what can I do over here in this direction that feels like it aligns with what I now know about the world, about myself, about all these sorts of things here? It's this Six of Swords is asking for movement. It's asking for separation. It's asking for you to move away from this very chaotic state over here and go, well, what can I do instead? Let's put some distance, whether that distance is emotional, spiritual, digital, whatever, and start being really much more disciplined about what I want to create moving forwards. If it's one thing that I don't have to tell you, Capricorn, it's that a lot of this is going to be very, very hard. A lot of this is going to require a certain amount of endurance, but also a certain amount of flexibility, a certain amount of pivoting, right? A certain amount of kind of rolling with the waves somewhat. I think of it more about, goats kind of scaling unscalable surfaces. To some extent, what the world is going through now is creating the perfect conditions for you to reinvent your reality in the same way that you have reinvented yourself, right? You've cleaned up a lot in here, around here, and now there's a way in which your Capricorn energy is, or your Capricorn skill set even, is being tapped into out of necessity. You can see what's there and what's not there. And like I said I think it was in the Aries overview, the Aries season overview reading, like, where's the spaces in between? All the things that are falling down and all that kind of, where's the gap that we can move through so that we can, get out of the blast radius of whatever this is and just start focusing on this thing over here? The movement is strong. The Nine of Swords is reversed. Now, the Nine of Swords reversed is a regaining of perspective. I think your ability to keep your perspective during this time is a skill in and of itself, but it's one that perhaps, because of the awareness of the after and the awareness of the consequences, that perhaps Capricorn might be able to field quite well. Why would you be afraid of this? I mean, this is creating the conditions in which you do your best work, taking the potential and building it into something extraordinary. But the Three of Wands is here also in reverse. And that's the one card that gives me pause for thought, because I'm not quite sure why it should be here like this. The Three of Wands in the upright is about movement forwards. It's about, oh, interesting. Maybe we've got some questions about sovereignty and the expression thereof. Tell me about this Three of Swords, please. Three of Wands. Where's the Three of Wands here? Well, I'm not surprised at all to see the Magician at the bottom of the deck. I was actually expecting the Magician to come out at some point, because when it comes to active manifestation, active creation of reality, and you have 2 cards of manifestation on the table. The 2 cards of manifestation on the table. But particularly when it comes to fashioning the world into what you think it should be, there's something very, very connected and very, very on point about the presence of both of these here, indicating that not only does the universe want you to show up and do this, but like there's something about the way that you see the world now that is very, very useful in terms of creating this little pocket reality for yourself. But this, I think that this 3 of Wands in reverse is a fear about getting started. Right? Don't have any fear about not getting started to the same blueprint that success was indicated to you in the past. Right? This is something entirely different. Any movement at all is important at this point, as long as it's not coming from a reactive place, as long as it's not coming from a knee-jerk place. Like there's a gentle exploration of what success means to you. Got 3 6s here, which is really quite interesting because there's always a collective element to that. But again, there's this sense that you shouldn't expect to get everybody else on board. You shouldn't be expecting this to be a group project. It's not. It's an individual creation of a pocket reality. And in Austin Coppock's 36 Faces, Decan 2 of Aries, which is where we are right now, where we're talking about sovereignty and it's the crown and all that kind of thing, he makes specific reference to the fact that, you know, those who choose to create their own reality end up attracting settlers and refugees. Like, they're coming, but they're not here to help you build it yet. Like, if you build it, they will come. You need to start now with you. It has to be your vision that you're putting in place, absent any kind of influence from other people, because as you've learned, that actually hasn't been too helpful for you over the course of time. The next step, as you know, as it seems to be for everyone, is literally just the next step. Don't be trying to pull together people for a big, you know, huge big project with an end result that's going to take X amount of time. It's like, no, you start doing the work now. You start putting the things in place that you need. People will come later. You don't need to worry about that. People are not necessary for your success in taking the next step. Do you see what I mean, Capricorn? So I'm going to leave it here, and I'm going to go over to the extended. If you would like to join me there, you're very welcome to do so. You can do that on Selfie. You can do that on Circle. I'd be delighted to see you in either place. And we're going to dig a little deeper into what it is that you need to know, because I think at this point, you know, it's not just about taking your whole self and slamming it in a direction and going this way. We have to recognise that the energies are very subtle at the moment, but they're probably not going to feel so subtle for you as they're squaring everything that you have in Capricorn, right? It's like there are going to be shifts and changes that happen in the way that you see things, and depending on, you know, what energy you have in Capricorn, if it's Mercury, it could be around the way that you think, Mars, the way that you're doing things, Venus, even in terms of what you think is valuable at this point, right? This is rippling across the year, so hold everything lightly, but I do think it's time to start getting focused and very self-focused on what you think the issue is here, you know? All right, and I'll leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.